Okay, so now let's talk about the AWS organizations. So AWS organization is a way for you to manage multiple AWS accounts at once. So within organizations, we have at the top level root level organization, root organizational units or OU organizational units, and it will contain our management account, which is the account that will be used for all administration purposes. And then within the root organizational unit, you can have different organizational units. You can have an organizational unit for development environment, and this organizational unit can have multiple member accounts. So you have to make a distinction between the management account that used to manage all the other accounts and organization, and then the member accounts which are just normal accounts that are part of an organization. So we can have an organizational unit for dev environment, we can have an of OU organizational unit for production environment, as well as with some other member accounts, and we can have organizational unit within organizational unit. So it's very possible to have an HR organizational unit within the production organizational unit, which is by the way within the root organizational unit. So you could have HR or finance and so on. So once we have all these accounts, so how does organizations perform its administration? So there is a very special word you need to know about for the exam called the organization account access role. Organization account access role. So when we have the organization and the management accounts, so if we happen to create a member account using an API from the organization service, then automatically an IAM role within the member account is going to be created. And that IAM role is called the organization account access role. Now the management accounts, when it needs to perform administrative duties onto the member account, will assume that administrative role using the assume role API. So this IAM role grants full administrative permission in the member account to the management account, and this is the magic how AWS organization work. Now this role is going to be used by management account or to perform admin tasks in the member account, for example creating IAM users. So this role can also be assumed by IAM users in the management accounts if they are authorized to do so. And as I said earlier, that this role is automatically added to new member accounts created with the API of AWS organizations. But in case you are inviting an account into an organization and that account already exists from out there, then in that case you have to manually create this role, otherwise things will not work. So now we have an organizational unit and multiple accounts. So we have multiple account strategy, and you can create accounts per department, per cost center, per environment, physical dev, per environment like physical, dev, test, production. So you can create them based on the regulatory restriction. You can get them for better resource isolation. For example, you want to have one account per VPC, or you want to have separate per account service limits, or you want to have a separate account for logging and so on. So you have different strategies to look at. For example, you want multi accounts or one account with a multiple VPC in it, and then of course you are going to have multiple accounts. So you need to have tagging standards for billing purposes, as we'll see this. And then some things we may want to do is like enable CloudTrail on all accounts, and then send all the logs of the CloudTrail into a central account that will have an Amazon S3 buckets, and or also maybe aggregate all those CloudWatch logs within all accounts into a central logging accounts, or maybe create a central accounts for security. So these are just strategies. There is really no guideline. It's up to you and your architecture to decide what you want to do. So we have a business unit of we have a business unit of type OU, okay, organizational unit. So we have management accounts. So we have management accounts, then organizational unit per business unit, and then maybe multiple accounts within each business unit. And you can also get, for example, management accounts and then dev, test, production types of organizational units, and then you can get project-based type of organizational units. So it's really up to you to decide. But this just gives you a few ideas that how organizational units or its nesting you can create. So now there are two feature modes you need to know for uh, each AWS organization. So at organization, the first one is consolidated billing feature. So this is going to aggregate billing across all accounts and gives you a single payment method directly from the management accounts. And that the reason you do so is that you are going to get pricing benefits from the aggregated uses. You are going to get volume discounts for EC2, for Amazon S3 and so on, because you are using more across all accounts. And all features are also going to be another feature mode for organizations. So this of course includes the consolidated billing feature, but on top of it, it adds the SCP feature that we'll see in the next lecture. And in case you invite an account, it needs to approve enabling all features to be part of that mode. And then once you have that all features enabled, and then we can use an SCP as well as service control policy to prevent the member account from ever leaving the organization. And this is why the accounts that have been invited into an organization with all feature must approve these features beforehand. And then once you have enabled all features, you cannot go back to using organizations only to only for the consolidated billing. Okay, so talking about what is shared in savings, we have reserved instances in organizations. So for billing purposes, the consolidated billing feature of AWS organization will treat all the accounts as one account, and that we know. So that means that all the accounts in the organization will receive the hourly cost benefit of the reserved instance that is purchased by any other account. So that means that it will give you the maximum amount of a saving, even if a specific account is not using that reserved instance, but another is like the so the payer account of an organization. So the management account can turn off the reserve instance RI sharing or savings plan discount sharing for any accounts, including VPR accounts. So it's possible for you to disable it and say, well, this reserved instance or this saving plan only belongs to that specific account. That means that in that case, reserved instances and the saving plan discounts will not be shared across accounts that have this turned off. And then on the opposite side, for a reserved instance or a saving plan to be shared across two accounts, then both of these accounts must have sharing turned on. Okay, so this is a little thing that the exam can test on you. Okay, so now let's have a look at the policies in AWS organizations. So we have the service control policies or SCP, and they help us to define allow list or block list for of a specific IAM actions. So they are applied either on the organizational unit level or the account level, and they do not apply at the management account level. Okay, so the SCP is directly applied to all the users and the roles within the account, including the root user, but the SCP does not affect any service linked roles. Service linked roles enable other services, integrate with like organizations, and therefore they cannot be restricted by service control policies. Service control policies must have an explicit allow, so by default they don't allow anything. By default they don't allow anything, and the use cases for service control policy is to restrict access to certain services only. For example, a user cannot use elastic map reduce EMR, or to, for example, enforce PCI compliance by explicitly disabling some services. So now let's have look at this hierarchy. So we have our root organizational unit, measurement accounts, organizational unit production, or account A, organizational unit HR, organizational unit finance with account B and C, and we have different service control policies applied at different level. So when the arrow is pointing, when the arrow is pointing to an organizational, that means it's applied to the organizational unit, else it's applied to an account. It's applied to an account. So from the top to bottom, if we look at the management accounts can do anything because no service control policies have been applied. So even though there was a deny access, Athena, a service control policy on management accounts, it does not apply because the management account keeps full administrative power. Now for account A, what happens? So let's have a look. So account A can do anything. Account A can do also anything. Just a second, let me see everything is correct or not. So yeah, sure, the account A can do anything because it inherits the top level service control policies. So the full AWS access service control policies, but then it will see the inherit any others that it will inherit some other service control policies. So we will have a deny redshift service control policy that's applied on the organizational unit production. Okay, and even though we have attached an authorized redshift service control policy to the account A directly, because we have explicit deny from the organizational unit production that has been inherited, then the account A cannot access redshift. Now account B in the HR organizational unit, again it inherits from the two steps. So it inherits stuff from the root organizational unit, production organizational unit, and HR organizational unit. So it will inherit a deny redshift service control policy and also inherit a deny AWS Lambda service control policy, and therefore it cannot access Lambda or redshift. And account C, well, it can do anything except accessing redshift because it is inheriting this from the organizational unit production. So okay, so hopefully now you understand the service control policies better. Now the service control policies example have two strategy: Blocklist and Allowlist. So there's an example where we allow everything, but we block explicitly DynamoDB, and on the other side, on the right hand side, we allow on EC2 and CloudWatch. So okay, so IAM policy evaluation logic. So it is quite complicated, but hopefully now everything should make sense. So by default, we start with a deny evaluation. Okay, so from the left hand side, and then the organization service control policy is going to be taken into the account. We will look for deny, then the resource based policy will be taken into the account. If there's an allow, then it's going to be allowed, and then the IAM permission boundaries are going to be looked at. If there is a deny, then it's going to be denied. Then the session policies are going to be looked at, and then the identity based policies are going to be looked at for an explicit deny or an explicit allow. So these IAM service control policies can be used, for example, to restrict tags. Okay. So now if you want to restrict a specific tags on AWS resources, you can use the AWS tag keys. AWS tag keys condition key. Now this will allow you to validate the tag keys attached to your resource against the tag keys in the IAM policy. And this is something that comes up in the exam. So if we want to only allow an IAM user to create an EBS volume, if it has the ENV and the cost center tags, then the policy would look like this. So we have match all keys. So for all values call on a string equal tag keys environment and cost center, and this means that we want absolutely both the environment and the cost center tags to present in the EBS volume when we create it. And you have an option to also use the value called for any value, which means that at a minimum you must either of these tags. So on the second example here in this slide, here if the EBS volume is created with the ENV but not the cost center is going to work, not the cost center is going to work, and vice versa, because we have the for any value condition key. Okay, so this can come up in the exam using like the AWS colon tag keys condition key. Okay, so there's also way of using service control policies to restrict creating resources that don't have the appropriate tags. Okay, so this is to prevent IAM users and roles for performing stuff that they can't do. For example, we can restrict launching an EC2 instance if it does not have the project and cost center tags. So in this example, well, the condition in your service control policy is going to be no for AWS colon request tag / project true. Okay, so that means that you are going to and this is a deny. So that means that it's going to deny any request that does not contain the project tag in our EBS volume. And then in the second one, it is a cost center as well. Okay, so the first example was using IAM policies directly to say yes, please use these tags. And in the second example that I showed you, this is for the service control policies only. So the next we have tag policies. So the tag policies are defined at the organization level and they help you standardize tags across all resources in an organization. So this is used to ensure consistent tags, audit tagged resources, maintain proper resource categorizations, and so on. So like you can define tag keys and their allowed values, and this helps with cost allocation tags. Or if you wanted to do attribute access control, then any non-compliant tagging operations will be prevented. Okay, so on these specified services and resources, and you can also have a report that lists all the tags on non-compliant resources. And then if you want to look for non-compliant tags, then use CloudWatch events. So in this example, on the right hand side for the secrets manager service, we can only have the key cost center to have the value 100 or 200. Another type of policy here, another type of policy on organization is called the AI services opt-out policy. So the backtrack of the context of this is that well, the AI services in AWS may use the content that you are actually giving them to improve the Amazon AI machine learning services. So for example, Amazon Lex, Amazon Comprehend, Amazon Poly, all of these services improve based on the data you give them. And so your data is used by AWS for improving their services, but you can opt out of having the content stored used by AI services for improvement. And for this, you have to create an opt-out policy which will apply to all the member account, and all AWS regions. So you can opt out of all AI services using this, or you can opt out just for specific AWS services. For example, on the bottom right, I am opting out for the AWS recognition only. AWS recognition is face analysis, object recognition, and those of the services of the AWS and Amazon Lex. So these policies can be attached to organization root, and organization root specific organization units or directly in individual member account. And then we have last on the list, the backup policies. So the backup policies helps you define backup plans using AWS backup. And so we define these backup policies at the organizational level with adjacent documents, and it's going to give you a granular control over the backing of the resources, such as the frequency, the time window, the backup reason, etc., etc. So these can be attached at the organizational root organizational unit or the specific organizational unit or in the individual member account, and it's an immutable backup plan. Immutable backup plan. So they will appear in the member account within AWS backups, but this is a view only type of view that can only be managed within the management accounts of your organization. So that's it for the AWS organizations and AWS organization policies. I hope you liked it, and it was a long lecture, so keep it continued, and I will see you in the next lecture.